Okay, I want you to imagine you're climbing a mountain. The path is often unclear when you're at the base. We always want more certainty. And the reason that is due to how our brain is on this survival track and wants to stay safe. When you have certainty, when you know where to put your feet, it feels safe. When you don't, there's always a risk that you might not survive, and it could be dangerous. So that's what happens when you're in this exploration mode. So we get stuck because we don't think we have enough certainty. We want to be sure there is no risk before we move. So we're constantly researching, but it yields diminishing returns. By the time people reach out to me, they've done lots and lots and lots of kind of cycles of this, looking for more information and realizing that, you know what, I've not actually got anywhere. I've got a whole pile of books and I've not actually made any progress. There's nothing new. You might be very knowledgeable about the topic and the theory, but you've not actually learned anything about the journey you need to take. There is no more data to gather to help us to make the next step. We've reached a point I like to call information saturation. What is it? Any new piece of information doesn't make our decision any clearer. Are you experiencing that right now? It would be like moving sideways around the mountain when you're trying to gain altitude. You end up using your resource, time and energy and money buying courses, reading books, listening to podcasts, going to events, all about going around the mountain at the same altitude. More options, they just make your mind bloated. You start reading theories about how to do things, and now you've got 5 different theories that you could follow, and you end up, it makes it more, you are struggling with one, now you've got 5 to choose from. So I want to introduce this concept I called a vantage point. It's a place where we can see what we could not see before. It's where you get up to a point in a mountain and you can start looking around. Going back to Ollie the Octopus, when we run experiments to discover and learn, it allows us to observe new information and make realizations, which informs the next step. So from a vantage point, the path becomes clearer. So when you're at the base of the mountain looking up, you can't see very clearly because the clouds are covering it. But when you work your way up to the first vantage point, you can see the next steps become a little bit clearer. Now, you've probably had these situations in your life up to now, where I like to think of it as moments of insight, when you're like, wow, I didn't realize you could do that. The feeling of gaining insight is incredibly powerful. So when you try something, you're like, I think I could get into this. Or say you perhaps you try photography and you realize, there's some new things I can learn here. And realization, a deep understanding of the situation you're in. This can only be done upon your application. So I'll use a quick example with content creation. I remember when I first made the videos, I was thinking about all the technical side of the videos. Then only when starting did I realize, you actually have to make some content that sounds interesting with the hook and all of this. And I realized, that's interesting. I quite like this script writing side of things. Vantage points unlock the opportunity to gain insight. Now, I want you to remember at this point, there's no right or wrong, only more data. And this data will unlock the power of insight. It gives you an opportunity for insight. And this allows you to make better decisions. Again, going back to the mountain, you're climbing up. As you travel, you just constantly check against your mission. Am I gaining altitude here or not? And this new data will unlock the ability to course correct as needed. And I think this is one of the big differences between the traditional path, where there's a very defined ladder, versus an exploratory path where you can meander through the jungle or up the mountain in different routes. It's hard to know because there are often no pathways going forwards or no known pathways, and you have to find it. So the process here is we move, we get to a vantage point, and we see what new information we have. So you keep climbing and gathering more data, and it will result in more clarity. The path becomes clearer. I like to have this visual of you're trying to climb a mountain and you get there and you're thinking about these 3 options. You're not really sure which one, but you get there and you realize there are just enormous boulders in the way that you can't climb over. So your decision has been made already. You can't go down that route. And sometimes you see a new route form in front of you that was a lot easier, that you couldn't see at the base. This really happens when you're making big pivots in your life. When you start speaking to people in industry, if you're looking to change, you're looking to start a new company or change industry, you don't really know until you get involved. So we know we need to get to a vantage point now. What does moving to a vantage point look like? It's taking what you know already and attempting to implement it into the real world in some way. So it might be thinking about the conversations you might want to have with people, but now actually going out and having those conversations. It's executed in the real world. There should be some interaction with the real world, and really, and often with other people, not in your head. It is creation and production versus consumption. So if you're thinking about making content, making videos, writing, it would be the equivalent of creating and publishing it versus just watching about how to create it. So here's some examples. Conversations with people in domains, writing a draft article, story or piece, shooting the video and editing, drawing the picture, painting the canvas, starting the website and writing the copy, taking the photo, experimenting with shots. How do I know when I've reached a vantage point? You'll get to a vantage point when you've produced or created something that can be reviewed in some way. I mean, that's like a loose rule of thumb you can follow. Obviously, there are plenty of exceptions here, but it's a fairly good one. So if you're applying for jobs, rather than thinking about how the best way to write a CV, it will be to actually send out the CV and seeing responses come back, but really, actually producing and doing in some way. You often feel different to how you felt before. Once you've sent things out, once you've produced, once you've published, once you've created, you'll usually have a different feeling around it after you've created something. You'll also notice new things about what you're working on. And going quite a few modules back, this allows your brain, the prediction engine, to have more new data to process. And this is a really good thing. This is a sign of progress. How long should I keep going? Now, this varies. I tend to say a good guidance is at least 3 to 5 iterations or repetitions of whatever you're doing. 10 is a good target, 20 even better. So this might be, let's say you're trying to post on Twitter or post on one of the various social media platforms. Don't review it and judge how you feel about it after the first one. You want to do kind of 3 or 5, i.e. 10 being a good one, 20 being even better. I did this for my social media content. I think I went for 10 videos before I really wanted to see how it felt, because that would be a vantage point for me. I did the same thing with intermittent fasting as well. It wasn't just my first 2 days doing it. I wanted to see what happened after 30 days. The principle here is you need enough data to make a reasonable assessment. Now, it's quite tricky. I notice we have to be fairly fluid with this, especially when I'm coaching people live, and it varies from person to person. So you have to make a judgment call here, but it's hard. It's never 1. It's usually kind of 5 or 10 at least. Example, write 5 articles, 5 videos, 5 interviews, social media posts, or attend 5 classes. If you're trying a new hobby, you don't want to just attend 1 class really, you want to attend a handful if you can. When to seek a vantage point. So you might think, okay, am I at a vantage point or not? This is a good way to check whether you need to move. You're clearly not making any progress in what you're trying to do. You feel like you're going around in circles. You see repeated patterns of behavior. You decide what you're going to do, then you change, and then you loop around, and you do it again. You decide something different. You change, and so on. The next one, potentially is a bit of a triggering pain point for a lot of people, because I see this with clients. They increasingly seek validation and opinions from others, which naturally are usually very different. And so they say, I can't decide. So-and-so said this. I should do this. So-and-so said this. If you're doing that, it usually means that, you know, at an unconscious level, you're desperately searching for more information to gain certainty, but you're not doing it yourself. You're now trying to outsource it to others. You probably need to make a move in some way. Writing pros and cons lists, and it's not making you feel any more confident. Now, I'm an advocate for pro and cons lists, but often I come across people who have already written them, and then a few months later, they're rewriting it again and again, but they've not actually gathered any more data to make that any more effective. Creation to content ratio. This is a simple but vital metric